And we're live. Welcome back to the LOOPCast. Today I'm joined by Josh, and I'm also joined by a very special guest, Margaret Olohan, reporter with the Daily Wire, one of our favorites. Margaret, how are you doing today?
I am great. Love to be here with you guys.
Yeah, special shout out. You joined on a very short notice. Thank you for accommodating, and it's cool to be streaming into the Daily Wire studios here.
I was going to take the day off, but then I found she was going. I gotta be here.
Dude, you're gonna hang me out to dry in a solo episode. You know I cannot handle that. Come on. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to everyone in the chat. If you guys could all welcome Mary Margaret today, that would be awesome. I see a lot of people. Some people saying they're coming in from Florida. We're definitely going to touch Florida today. Hurricane Milton landed. Seems like not as bad as it could have been. But if you want to help us out,
book on the shelf. I have her book on the shelf.
Oh, you do?
No way.
Come on, I do.
Wow.
Oh, Josh is going mobile?
I love this.
That's going to be great for the audio.
Amazing.
Bang. D-Trans. Published author, accomplished reporter.
Here I'm showing it for the audience. I nearly fell on my keister.
So one thing I wanted to ask about, I know you've been mobile with the reporting. You were at the Butler rally, and it'd be nice to hear from an on-the-ground perspective. I saw the stuff online. It looked massive. Was it as big as it appeared online, and what was the energy like on the ground?
Yes, we actually have a video coming out soon from Daily Wire on my experience on the ground in Butler. It was a really, really cool day, a really amazing day to be there. I'm so glad that we went because they were honoring Corey Comparatore, the man that was shot and killed by the assassin. He's a father, he's a firefighter, and his wife and his daughters went to Butler on Saturday to commemorate him and, be the guests of honor at this Trump rally, which, by the way, had almost 100,000 people there, according to estimates from the Trump campaign. And I will tell you guys, it felt like it. We were in the media area. We were at first out in the crowd interviewing people, trying to get a sense of, why they were there, what they thought of Trump surviving the assassination attempt and a second assassination attempt, why they're voting for Trump in the first place, because everyone there was a Trump supporter. And then halfway through the event, we went into the media area so that we could, have access to Wi-Fi and charge and stuff like that. And once we were in that media area, there was no getting out because this crowd was so tightly packed around the area where Trump would appear. And, it was just insane. The amount of people who were there, they were so amped up, so excited. And everybody we talked to, it was this interesting mix of excitement for Trump and then kind of a reverence for the sacrifice of Corey Comparatore because, he did throw his body on his wife and daughters to protect them from the bullets. And, he was struck by one of those bullets and it killed him. So this really beautiful mix of, or I would say maybe honoring Corey and then excitement for Trump. And Trump also had that vibe as well. He invited an acclaimed tenorist up on stage to sing Ave Maria in Corey's honor.
How was that?
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was amazing. I was emotional. I was very teary. Everybody in the audience seemed very emotional. And we got some great footage too of people bowing their heads, praying, staying silent during that time. And then, of course, I'm sure you guys saw the clips or the footage of Corey's seat, the seat in which he was literally shot. Mm-hmm. They set that aside. They put his firefighter uniform on it so everybody around the stadium or the event space could see that uniform. And because there were neon stripes on it, you really could see it from really far away. So I just have to tell you guys, standing there as they sang Ave Maria, everyone's bowing their heads or looking up at this seat. And I have chills just thinking about it. It was such a moving moment. And Trump, I haven't heard him speak live that many times, but I was very impressed by the way that he just honored Corey in that moment. And he said that Corey's legacy is immortalized by what he did that day and how people are going to remember that. It kind of reminded me of the language that they use in that Homer would use in the epics, like the Iliad, the Odyssey. It's all about remembering your name. Trump kind of tapped into that when he talked about Corey and his legacy. So just really memorable, emotional day. And we have a cool video coming from Daily Wire soon that I'll send you guys when it's up, just showing the excitement, the honor that they showed to Corey and this buzz ahead of the election.
Yeah, and no fake accents or teleprompters?
No fake accent, and some serious bulletproof glass in front of Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
And I don't know if I said this already, but he literally stood in the exact spot where he was shot. We talked to Jack Posobiec before the event started. It was one of the interviews that I did, and Jack told us that he had heard from people inside the Trump campaign that Trump literally said, no, I want to be in the exact same spot. I want to be standing where I stood when I was shot. And for security reasons, there had been apparently some discussions about putting him in a little bit different of a spot, but he said no, he wanted to be in the exact same place, and he was.
Yeah, I heard the slope roofs weren't a problem for the Secret Service this time around too.
Yeah,
the same roof is now covered.
Well, I think they did cover up the roof where the assassin was laying. That was something that I heard about afterwards, where I think they just completely covered that spot so it wouldn't detract from the event, or, you know, wouldn't be a distraction, very morbid and horrible distraction, you know, where he literally was. But even on the way in, driving by, there were security and Secret Service and snipers everywhere. It was very cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, as it should be. And that was such a obvious integral part of the story here. And even the turn of his head saying, as I was saying, pointing to the same graph, of course, is just, you can't separate from the stories. Like, you can't.
Totally epic.
Democrats remain to be confused why this appeals to men, like a masculine urge. And it, of course, for any normal human being in Pennsylvania, we understand. So, thank you for sharing on that. Did you see the Elon jump live?
Yes, of course. That was really cool. I was not expecting that.
Great meme out of that, too.
Yeah, the crowd loved Elon, and that was very fun to see him interacting with them, to see Trump interacting with him. That's just like a dynamic that we hadn't really encountered before, right? Where, you know, Elon's literally in the air and Trump's kind of like, okay, like, hey.
Yeah, Elon not really normally addressing a crowd of 100,000 people either, you know. So it's like Trump's kind of helping him along, you know. He's got a little bit more muscle memory, ability to hold a crowd. That's just amazing, though. I mean, like Trump, how he's able to do this for hours and just keep people entertained and keep the crowd moving, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it really was. And I think I was impressed by the way he handled the gravity of that day, because, you know, it wasn't just his return to Butler, which everybody was very excited about. You know, I talked to a bunch of guys that go by the name the MAGA Boys, and they were just, the enthusiasm was oozing out of them. They were so excited that, like, their hero came back to the spot where he was shot. But I think Trump balanced that excitement really well with the gravity of, you know, Corey's death. Corey was killed there. And so I think it would have been a difficult thing to balance as the lead speaker, and he did a really good job.
Yeah, reminiscent too of his speech at the RNC as well. Like a main portion of that speech was devoted to Corey and the sacrifice and moment of silence. So I'm glad to see that he's handling it that way, and glad to hear from on the ground. So we have a few topics we want to get into today, Mary Margaret. First of all, we have the Milton landfall. So shout out to anyone in Florida if you guys are still there, or maybe making your way back. But it appears as though it kind of avoided a worst case scenario event. We still have power cut off for 3.3 million energy customers, 11 million at risk for flooding. Only 9 deaths, of course, pray for the repose of those 9, but seemingly could have been much worse. And I saw some people talk about this, and I really believe this. Like, the power of prayer is real. I saw many people offering very serious prayers, very serious intentions to spare Florida, and it appears like it wasn't as bad as it could. So I'm not going to speak against the power of prayer. It was a Category 5 event. And so, hopefully we return here. It seems like Governor DeSantis is really at the head here. It doesn't have time for Vice President Kamala Harris to butt in with the calls. But before I get into maybe the main topic, you guys have seen this Lieutenant Dan thing, right?
Yes. This guy is awesome. I love this energy. We need more of this in our American men.
Okay, you seem familiar. Give me the description of Lieutenant Dan for the people.
Lieutenant Dan is a one-legged, right?
Yep.
One-legged man who refused to get off of his boat as the hurricane is coming in. And he said that, you know, he was praying about it. He was going to be fine. I think he compared himself to Noah and said that he was going to be fine. And the authorities tried to get him to leave his boat, and he refused. I don't remember exactly in the end. I think he stayed the whole time, right?
He did stay. And they had people were following him on TikTok, and someone came up and asked him, like, hey, are you okay? He's like, yeah, dude, I'm totally fine. Like, I made it through the storm. He's like, I'm not leaving my boat. The boat is the best place to be in the flood. I think the exact line is, quote, I'm going to be fine. I'm not going anywhere. The safest place to be on a boat on a boat is in a flood. We all learned that with Noah. Quotes that go hard.
I mean, that's amazing.
That's the American spirit right there.
It is the American spirit right there.
I mean, obviously, as a dad of 6, I would be like, I'm getting the heck out of town.
Yeah, right.
If I lived there. But then I thought about it, like if I were, let's say, in my 80s, and I'm, my wife and I were just like retired. I'm like, bring it on. I got to wait in traffic. I mean, if I go, I go. I've been good.
Yeah. No, literally. Yeah. I mean, I have a brother down there who's in his 20s, and he was kind of like, meh, it's fine. And me and my sisters and my mom are all like raising hell because we're so concerned our brother is going to drown. He was completely fine.
Yeah, that was me. That was me during Hurricane Irma when I was at Ave Maria. And I was like, the buildings are hurricane proof. It's category 4, but I'm like, I feel safer here than hitting the road and being in traffic and gas shortages or whatever. So we just stuck it out. And that's the Florida man lifestyle. Someone brought up he did have 16 prior arrests and charges. I do believe that. The type of guy who would stay in a boat during a category 5 hurricane probably comes with some arrest charges.
That Venn diagram is got some overlap. Yeah,
there's some overlap there for sure. Happy to see our boys okay. But yeah, just wanted to bring up Milton there. Of course, major story. And shout out Lieutenant Dan for braving the storm. But one thing, and I'm happy we have you here for this, Mary Margaret. And Erica, of course, is a crowd favorite on this program. But I would like a female perspective. So something I saw in Politico this morning, we have Sarah Longwell. She is a self-described never Trumper, publisher of The Bulwark. She is doing all of these focus groups. And she's bringing up her observations of what she is seeing as the biggest voting indicator is no longer going to be education or geography. It's simply going to be gender.
Oh, like it's 92 all over again. Okay.
92 all over again. Okay. So here are some of her reasons. And I'd actually like to hear from your perspective, Mary Margaret, and your perspective, Josh, what reasons you think this is as well. Her reasoning, why men love Trump. So-called woke culture has taken hold in society. Men have voiced frustration with feeling policed on their language and actions, even scapegoated by society. Many find Trump to be an ally in their plight. Longwell says Trump gives everybody permission to be their worst selves. You want to say sexist things that are funny? Trump's there to tell you that it's cool. Next point, some see Trump as an aspirational figure. Longwell recounts hearing men in her focus groups talk about his wealth, his attractive wife, his ownership of a football team. I actually didn't know he owned a football team at one point. Did you know that, Josh?
Yeah, USFL. It was the New Jersey, what was the name of the team? Yeah, I remember that.
Interesting. Okay. One interesting point too, and I think broadly agree.
By the way, he actually tried to buy the Minnesota Twins in the 80s. They're up for sale right now. So.
He could buy them again.
He could buy them.
He's got a lot of money going towards lawsuits though right now. He has fused an old style coalition that is socially conservative, pro-life, Christian, evangelical, together with the sort of Barstool Sports bro coalition that is pro-choice, culturally fine with things like gay marriage, but doesn't like all the quote woke stuff. And then we have Longwell is also hearing increased angst from voters about the world being in chaos, whether it's hurricanes or foreign policy, and even among women. When people feel really unsettled, there's a bit of a reaching for a strong man, as she says. And then her advice for the Harris campaign is to keep abortion rights center stage. When Longwell asks voters about what's top of mind, they usually say prices, immigration, and crime. But once her team brings up reproductive rights, it's all any of the women in her focus groups can talk about. So before I get into some more of the facts here, Mary Margaret, why do you feel like Trump is got this stronghold on men, even men not traditionally in the Republican camp?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons, but a major one is that Trump isn't afraid to be a man. And Trump has certainly many vices. He has things that I particularly take issue with that he has in his past. But at the end of the day, he's not telling men that they can't be men. And that's what a lot of the Democratic Party has done these days. And that's what a lot of Democratic policies are telling men is that, if you are a man, then you talk about your feelings all the time and you talk about race and gender identity all the time. And you spend a lot of time suppressing what you feel maybe are good, natural, manly virtues. Those things you're told that they're bad. And so I think at the end of the day, a lot of men are looking at the political options right now and they're saying, okay, this side of the aisle is focused on abortion, on gender identity, on things that I don't agree with. Whereas the other side of the aisle, there's someone that I can look up to as a leader who's not telling me to repress myself, who's embracing politics and policies that I agree with. Why not vote for him? And I think she's also oversimplifying it. When it comes to Trump, I'm sure many of these men admire that he's married to a beautiful woman and he's been very successful. But a lot of American voters are more worried about the economy than they are about Trump having a hot wife. A lot of voters nowadays are more worried about, their children being indoctrinated in schools than they are about Trump owning a football team in the past. So I think that, some of these reporters are very out of touch with the American people. And so when they try and boil things down like this, they miss some key points. Trump embracing a platform that does not condone men and women's sports or children being transed in irreversible transgender procedures, that is hard for them to understand because they have been taught that gender ideology is only good, and they've been taught that there's no such thing as a post-birth abortion. They've been taught all these things, and they accept them as fact rather than evaluating them to see if they are true or not. And so when Trump embraces a platform that stands for these things, it confuses them too much. And they're like, all right, it must be because Melania is really beautiful, or it must be because Trump is a really successful businessman. And I think those things are attractive to men for sure, and to women. But at the same time, it's more than that. And so there's a reason that so many people came out for Trump originally in 2016. And it wasn't just because Trump is cool. It wasn't just because Trump is manly. It was because of the platform that he stood for. And that platform is really interesting how it has evolved into a more pro-family, in some cases pro-life platform. And that's resonating with American voters. And then, of course, when it comes to Kamala on the abortion issue, I would argue this, I can't remember the woman's name, but she's right. Abortion has really been reaching women largely because the Democratic Party has been using misinformation to confuse and scare women, to tell them that a Trump presidency would make a national registry of pregnancies or miscarriages. Those are lies. They're telling them that a Trump presidency would criminalize miscarriages or target you if you have a miscarriage. So all these lies about abortion that are intended to scare women away from voting for Trump. And of course, we know if you look at the actual language of what they're talking about, first of all, they're talking about Project 2025, which Trump has distanced himself from. But if you look at what Project 2025 actually stands for, it's very reasonable pro-life laws, pro-life policies, protecting the unborn, and protecting women. So it's a lot of misinformation and scare tactics, but at the end of the day, they're working on women. And so I think it's accurate to say.
Yeah, Josh, what would you have to say?
I do feel like right now the Trump campaign has identified at least, it is true that suburban women, obviously single women more than married women, but still even some married women have been trending Democrat the last few cycles. But I do think the trans issue is pretty explosive for several reasons. I think it is giving pause on at least some women, especially moms in the suburbs, who are concerned about their daughters playing sports and what this has to do, and this idea that, it's one thing to tell Americans you should accept people who are gay and be, and we have our disagreements with, marriage on that question, of course. But just accept everyone who claims to be of an opposite sex, everyone who claims to be trans, because some of this stuff seems a little bit off, like people doing cosplay as women because they have some sort of fetish or some kind of crazy thing like that. And so there's a lot of moms who are like, this seems a little crazy. Like we can let everyone do their own thing if they want to, but that doesn't mean we should let you play volleyball or go into the locker room, And so there is some pushback. The Democrats just assumed they could run the table with abortion in the suburbs and get women to vote their way. But the trans issue is giving them pause. But I would also like to say, along with trans and the porno books in schools, it's having a difference on Latino and Black men, especially. They're like, wait a minute, what? Trans and all this stuff? Like, you're just going to pretend like this is all like, what? Like, God made us man and woman. So and this is one aspect where for conservatives for a long time, we've been wanting more Black and Hispanic voters to consider crossing the aisle and voting for Republican candidates. And we're like, hey, you guys, you care about your Christian faith. You should come on board with us because of abortion, marriage. These are the issues. And unfortunately, for a long time, they haven't done that because they look at the Republican Party as only caring about the rich, Mitt Romney and this kind of stuff. But Donald Trump having done a reset on policy, on economic policy. Hey, let's put trade barriers up. Let's help out workers. It's giving blacks and Latinos an opportunity to say, wait a minute now, this is a new Republican Party. And frankly, the Democratic Party is leaving me with this trans stuff. So a major opening here.
So I'm happy to bring this up. And just real quick, before you go, Mary Margaret, we had Obama stumping for Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania last night. And truly, I saw this and I almost was shocked that this was even...
Unscheduled stop. Yeah.
Unscheduled stop in Pittsburgh. And what he says, he basically has the equivalent of a "I'm not mad, I'm disappointed" conversation with black men. And he says, quote,
"Dad's disappointed.
Part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as a president, and you're coming up with other alternatives and reasons for that." Basically, the scolding of black men, hey, you're not as excited as you were for me as for Kamala Harris. And we have a real problem here. They're acknowledging the problem that we're all kind of acknowledging. You said it. The pollster saying it. Now we get Obama himself saying it. And I'm almost confused what he's implying. He's either implying that black men are sexist, and that's not why they're voting for it, or that they're a race traitor somehow, that there's a reason outside of sexism why they're not voting for him. A pretty obvious reason to me would be she got appointed, 70 days ago. No one knows anything about her. She's changed every position she's possibly had. She's a radical California Democrat that's out of touch with average black men in Pennsylvania, men in general. That would probably be my suggestion. But the Democrats acknowledge they have a real problem here. This isn't just a throwaway, hey, we might lose a few votes type thing.
But I bet you Hillary Clinton's going to do better amongst black voters than Kamala Harris. And
Why
if that's true, well, just because Donald Trump was able to shift the party towards a more pro-worker stuff. And so black and Hispanic voters have been now open to voting for Trump. They voted for him in better numbers in 2020 than they did in 2016. And so if that trend continues, and the polling is like crazy, it is showing people like, are these polls true? They can't even get it. And so if actually there's at least a 50-50 shot that Trump will do better amongst black voters than Hillary. So it's not a sexist thing for these black men. They actually agree with Trump on the issues.
Yeah. And also, this is not the first time we've heard this type of rhetoric from a Democrat. Didn't Biden say several years ago that if you didn't vote for him, then you weren't black?
Yes.
That is race baiting if I ever heard of it. Or I'm sorry, calling you a race traitor.
Yeah.
If you don't vote for him, that's just
that's a sign of a confident campaign, though, don't you think, MMO?
Yeah,
I mean, sexist if you don't vote for us.
I think my personal favorite was when he said that Mitt Romney was going to put y'all back in chains. I think was specifically from.
Oh gosh, yeah,
an unbelievable. It just makes my whole body go like, I cannot believe.
Yeah,
someone just said that.
Well, and also, I think Democrats are very aware that they have a problem with men. I've seen a lot of reporting on this recently where they're trying to make a contrast where Democrats have a problem with men and Republicans have a problem with women when it comes to voting. And you see a lot of this in the way that people like former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki talk about masculinity, right? Where just a couple weeks ago, Jen Psaki was trying to tell us that Doug Emhoff was the new version of masculinity. It's this kind of like simp version of masculinity that the Democratic Party wants to put forward, where it's the man behind the woman, the man that's supporting the woman, that's cheerleading for her in the stands. Only now we know it's actually the man that's slapping his ex-girlfriend while they're partying in France, or the man that's impregnating his nanny, allegedly. Maybe that's the version of masculinity that the Democratic
Party paragon of virtue.
So what's funny about that is so he's redefining masculinity to, I don't know, Mad Men in the 50s. Like slapping your spouse and
so we're going backwards.
Nannies? What?
Yeah, we're going forwards with the women and we're going backwards with the men to the 1950s.
If you want to, sexually assault women or impregnate your nanny, just make sure you're a Democrat. Then all is forgiven, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, Joe. He was just on Morning Joe, and Joe Scarborough was like, "Oh, what do you think about these accusations?" And he's like, "Oh, they're a distraction." Like Joe Scarborough, the same guy with Brett Kavanaugh that was like, "Believe all women and women are always right." Me too, and all of a sudden, with him,
every single person, every single media commentator or Democrat that formally went after Brett Kavanaugh has nothing to say about these allegations against Doug Emhoff. And that's something I've noticed in particular because I did a lot of reporting on Tara Reade, the woman that accused Biden of sexually assaulting her. And I remember at the time, And at the time I was working at the Daily Caller, and Greg Price was a colleague of mine, and he and I would just, look through all of these different media outlets or commentators or lawmakers who had tried to say that Brett Kavanaugh was a rapist. And they had nothing to say about Tara Reade either. And I wrote a story last week where I talked to a couple women that accused Bill Clinton of raping or sexually assaulting them. And they were like, look, the media decides whether your allegations are worthy or not. And they decided it based on political party. And I think that's what we've seen a lot here with Doug Emhoff.
Totally. And I want to get into this section now. Basically, what I'm saying, Democrats in all caps, why don't men like us? And I'd like to offer first, like as a man myself, not to brag, but as a man myself, I think just at its core, men are really, they don't want someone to tell them what being a man is like. This frustrates me with kind of some of the influencers on both sides of the whole thing. It's like, we know what a man is. So when someone's acting like a man, that's appealing to us. So Trump getting up after getting shot, that's acting like a man. That's courage. DeSantis being in front of the hurricane, that's acting like a man. Total that's competent. No wars abroad, showing strength abroad. That's acting like a man. So those are the things that appeal to actual men. It's not, making a weird TikTok saying you should vote. So anyway, I have a few kind of maybe fall on your face type things of what Democrats are doing. I'd like to get into Dorito Gate at this point. Mary Margaret, I'm not sure if you've seen this. I almost am sad that I have to show this to you. But Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan went on the podcast of a left-wing podcaster, Feminist Fabulous.
My governor.
Yeah, I have a lot of things to say about Gretchen. But here we go. We have the clip here. Caption, if he won't feed you, Big Gretch will. Here we go.
Camo hat too. Insane.
Truly. What could possibly have been? And we wonder why men don't like you, or we think we're. What was going through the head here? What is this? Can anyone make sense of this?
Well, so in our newsroom at Daily Wire yesterday, we were like, what? We're like, what is this? Because I saw a whole bunch of people immediately jumping to certain conclusions. So I look it up, and the context is that Whitmer went on this woman's podcast, which, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think is called like Chip Chat, something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's a pun on the Chip Chat, and that's why she's feeding her a Dorito, supposedly.
Yeah, for audio listeners, can we just get and pop over to the YouTube if you want to see this? But it's Gretchen Whitmer wearing a Harris Walls hat, camel Harris Walls hat. A podcaster is on her knees being fed a Dorito to her, making like what I would say is basically like sexualized face.
Absolutely sexualized.
And then the camera panning over to Whitmer, kind of standing there in the hat with the Doritos in her hand.
And there's a weird caption too on the Instagram.
If he won't feed you, Big Gretch will, is the caption.
Yeah.
So did you get to the bottom of this? Like
Okay, my conclusions, and granted, I feel like I did ask my Gen Z sister, break this down for me. I feel like there's a Gen Z thing here that I'm not getting. I'm not on TikTok. I'm 29. I feel like I'm too old for it. But my sister didn't even know what was going on. So I think at the end of the day, it was a promo for the podcast in which they talk about some really dark things. But I don't think it's far-fetched to say that the symbolism there of Whitmer giving her a chip as if she's receiving the Holy Eucharist in communion. I think the parallel is very, very easy to draw there. It's easy to come to that conclusion. I'm not convinced that that's what's going on, but it's a disturbing little video. I don't know why a governor would willingly participate in something that really comes off like it's sexual innuendo, but
well, I don't know why
here's what I have to say, though.
I don't know why a governor would shut down the state, including churches, but keep strip clubs open. I don't know why a governor would try to get her boat docked in Florida while she shut the rest of the state down. I don't know why a governor would actually put nursing home patients with COVID patients and kill many of them in Michigan. So I don't think she's the soundest of decision makers, would be my 2 cents. But go ahead, Josh.
I mean, the fact is the Detroit suburbs, it's like 1/3 of everyone there is Catholic or formerly Catholic. this is a state that has a significant Catholic population. Okay, maybe it's not as much as Pennsylvania, but there's no way that Gretchen Whitmer, who got elected from Michigan twice, sadly, would not have an understanding that this would have religious connotations of dispensing the Eucharist.
Or no one in her staff. No one in her staff
No,
would
of
look
course,
at this and be like,
there's,
"Oh,
I will not give her any credit of ignorance. There's no way she's ignorant of this. Of course, that's the whole point. They're talking in the whole podcast about abortion. They're cracking jokes about post-abortion.
Oh, Josh, wait, watch. You got to.
They know, and they know that the Catholic Church is the one institution that is so strongly against everything that they're promoting with abortion.
So here's the opening question that they promoted the podcast with. Here it is.
Okay, and you have 2 daughters. When they come back home and they leave their Stanley cups lying around, do you ever think about getting a post-birth abortion?
Well, first of all, thank you for raising that because there's no such thing.
Great.
So I think it's really important for us to make sure
Mm-hmm.
people understand that when people like Donald Trump say that after birth abortion, that's just not really a thing that exists. So.
What a delightful
Well, that's
program.
not true.
Not only is that not true, but like let me crack a joke about you murdering your kids. Like,
Yeah. And the laugh.
What
are we
The
doing?
immediate laugh.
Oh.
But again, now I just know some of our audience, again, they may not realize, but there is also a very sexual thing that's going on with this. And you don't have to Google it. Just trust me. This is everything that was done here was on purpose. There's no way. I'm seeing some of the Catholic lefties who are running cover on this. Oh, it's not about this. It was Stephen Colbert was fed a piece of pizza by some idiot on whatever. And it's a whole TikTok trend. I go, I don't give a crap. There's no way on God's earth that her political person could see this and go, hey, time out. This was going to be bad. You can't do this. No politician, no governor for sure would have ever tried doing something like this even 15 years ago. It's very pornified and it's just gross. And I don't even know what would be a proper analogy for how to offend a Muslim or Jew, because my mind doesn't even think about how could I offend that religion? Why would you do this? It's just absolutely asinine.
Well, people are asking if she apologized. No, she has not apologized. She's saying that it's a TikTok trend. This kind of feels like to me one of those, like a Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence example, where they do something that's so obviously offensive or offensive adjacent. And then they turn it on you and are like, oh, you're the dumb, uneducated, religious bigot because you don't get the joke. You're not in on this bizarrely niche, no one really understands joke. You get offended at everything. You guys are so boorish and don't understand.
We're duped.
It's a classic
Gloria
op.
Purvis said.
Yeah, this feels like an op. Like, even if it isn't, the fact that no one knew, it feels like an op is my two
Yes,
cents.
the whole gaslighting.
I want to hear Margaret, what were you saying?
Yeah, and I just want to backtrack to that opening clip. The reason that they put that there is to laugh as if it's so absurd that a post-birth abortion could happen. And they literally like cackle at it as if it's funny. And she says, I'm so glad you brought that up. But meanwhile, we're being gaslit. Post-birth abortions, it's a fancy way of saying babies are being allowed to die or being killed after they're born. And what that is, and I think we should talk about this as much as we can because this is so crazy that we're being gaslit like this. That's when a baby survives an abortion and the doctors are like, meh, it's up to the parents if we want to save it. Or the doctors are just like, meh, we're going to let that baby die. And in the best case scenario in that situation, maybe the most humane case scenario, they provide what we call comfort care, which is basically making the baby be warm while it dies. It's just really inhumane and grotesque. Totally. And we know for a fact that this is happening. I reported a couple months ago in a story that has been used by a ton of Republican commentators recently, even by some more liberal outlets, how in Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz, he removed reporting requirements that had the state explaining to the population when they were doing this. Those reporting requirements are gone now, but the most recent ones show that I believe 5 babies were allowed to die after they survived abortions. So that's not like conservatives making that up. That's not me, a conservative journalist, making that up. That's literally the state Department of Health data saying, yes, we had 5 babies survive abortions. We didn't do anything to save them and they died. So it is happening. If you want to be more literal, Governor or Gretchen Whitmer, if you want us to be more literal, we could say your state is allowing babies to die after they survive abortions. That maybe is the most plain way of saying it, but
they'd find a
I
way
find
to
it's,
get around.
yeah, I find it's so
Because they're
insulting to
addicted.
our intelligence.
It's 100% a sacrament. It's a sacrament to the left. They'll never give it up. It's the golden goose. Though they'd find a way to get around and fact check. And someone brought up in the chat too, this does remind me a lot of the Olympic opening ceremony when they did something very obviously blasphemous to Christians. And then at the last hour, they're like, no, it was actually this
that
thing.
Wasn't it at all.
Idiots. Yeah, right. It feels very similar to that. And again, why are we not appealing to men, Democrats? Confusing. I do have something, just because we got to stay tight today. Thanks again for coming on, Mary Margaret. Speaking to like, be a man, stop telling me how to be a man. I just saw the most insane, right before I came on, the most insane advertisement to try to get men back in the corner from the Kamala Harris campaign, and we all get to enjoy it together or not enjoy it. Up to you. Here we go. Let's see if this convinces Josh.
I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF to start a family? I'm not afraid of families.
They want to be childless cat ladies?
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Because I'm man enough to support women.
Man enough to know what kind of donuts I like.
Man enough to admit I'm lost, even when I refuse to ask for directions.
Man enough to not ban young women from reading Little Women.
Or one of those pants books that the sisters like.
I'm man enough to raw dog a flight. It sucked. Not worth it.
I'm man enough to be emotional in front of my wife.
In front of my kids.
In front of my horse. I'm man enough to tell you that I cry at Love Actually. Good Will Hunting.
West Side Story.
That and Predator.
And I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful. That's not how my mama raised me.
I love women.
I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge.
And I'm man enough to help them win.
Change your vote, Josh?
Well, I got to tell you, as a man living in the swing state of Michigan, I can tell you, I voted for a woman named Tudor Dixon, who, if she would have been elected, we wouldn't have Gretchen Whitmer as our governor.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's all just a joke, because none of these men would vote for Marsha Blackburn if she were the Republican candidate for president. I mean, it's a joke.
This is the zestiest stance I've ever seen. No man has sat like this.
I'm so confused. This is
West Side Story. You lost me there.
West Side, yeah, their movie selections
Totally
are West
terrible.
Side Story, Love Actually, and what was the other one? West Side Story, Love Actually.
That's the whole point. These are men that can watch, tear jerking girly movies and not. But West Side Story. I mean, if I ever have to go to a long time in purgatory or worse, hell, I'm going to have to watch that all day long.
Love Actually is a
Josh,
terrible
this
movie.
isn't how you talk to the boys. This isn't how you chop it up on the reg. Go ahead,
Can we
Mary Margaret. I'd love
backtrack
to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, let's backtrack a second, because
Yep.
correct me if I'm wrong. This is supposed to win over male voters to Kamala.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who were they talking to when they made this?
A woman.
A woman, like, did a woman make this? Did
Yes.
like, I don't think a straight man would make that video and say this will reach straight men. Like, I don't know if anyone would watch that and think that.
Well, see, I eat my steak rare. I raw dog a flight. I'm tough, but I vote for women for president. Like, again, are there some people in this country who would never vote for a woman for president? I suppose so. I mean, it's statistically so insignificant it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's very low percentage.
And so this idea that, like, the reason why, well, obviously Kamala Harris is so awesome in so many issues, the only reason you won't vote for her because you don't like women, or maybe because she's a communist. That could be why I'm not going to vote for her. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't think that. I think the percentage of men who would not vote for Kamala because she is a woman is incredibly low and insignificant. And the men that I have spoken to, that I have interviewed and asked them why they're not voting for her, it's based on her policies and on her background as a lawmaker over the past, 20 years. So I don't know that her sex has anything to do with why men aren't voting for her, but I think that commercial might have something to do with why men might not vote for her.
I can't vote for Trump any harder. Like, stop trying to convince me, Democrats. It's impossible for me to vote any harder.
This plus the, Obama's panic stop in Pittsburgh to try to scold black men into voting for her all speaks of the opposite of a confident campaign. And the thing is, like, the polling numbers have started to come out at the beginning of this week that showed all of a sudden, slipping away. Sugar high's gone. The post-debate, surge is gone.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, the polling numbers, they're making big assumptions here. And I try to explain this to people. Like, what happens is, if you're doing a poll, you're trying to judge what a random sample of Americans are so you can figure out how they're going to vote in November. And the fact is, when you call highly educated Democrats, they are so happy to answer the phone. Yes, I can't wait to vote for her. But then you try to get like your average, redneck good old boy who lives in Manton, Michigan. He's not picking up the phone to talk to some pollster, hangs up.
Yep.
So you get what's known as a response bias. Okay. White men who aren't college educated are not going to respond to a pollster as much as, men and women above 65 who love Democrats and are voting. And so somebody did a pretty deep analysis of this. His name is Mark Harris. And he looked over the polling on this and he found out, he goes, look, the response bias is still not a major factor. If you look at, there's like 45 different races for Senate from 2016, 18, 20, and 2022. And they were off by the last poll right before the election was off by an average of 3.9 points. And they were all one way, all against the Republican. So the Republican candidate did better by 3.9 points on election day than the last poll. And it's an additional point from early October where we're at right now. It's 5 points practically, 4.9. So if those polls, if they haven't fixed them, if they haven't accounted for this response bias, what does that mean? It means not only do we obviously win the Senate race in West Virginia and Montana, which pretty much Republicans are considered to win those two, but you're going to win Ohio, you're going to win Pennsylvania, you're going to win Michigan, and you're going to win Wisconsin. Republicans are going to pick up 6 seats. They could be as high as 55 in the Senate. And of course, that means all the swing states, maybe except for Nevada, are going to all go for Trump if the response bias is still a factor. If people aren't responding to polls because they don't trust them, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why I think Democrats are panicked, because they have better polling. Both political parties. I hear this often. Oh, of course the party is going to put out polls that they like. Here's the thing. These are people who are trying to spend money to win. They're not like, ABC, let's put out a poll, whatever. They're like, where should we dedicate our resources? Should we invest in this Senate race in, Montana, or is it a goner? Should we invest in Pennsylvania? Look where the money's going. All the money is going into Senate races in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. They're throwing some money in, Florida and Texas because they've got so much money they don't know what to do with it. But they know it's a goner. And
I think she raised $1 billion. I think
again, this is the new world, right? The coalitions have completely changed. So the Democratic candidates, they're flush with cash. They are, and it's going to be that way for a while. So even if Trump wins, which I think he will, the next midterm election will be a big win for Democrats then, because their coalition are highly motivated, they're wealthier, and they vote in every election. Trump's coalition is multiracial, and they're lower on the income scale, and they don't vote in midterms as much. So that's going to be a big challenge. We'll see.
Yeah. And if you weren't convinced with the man escapade, Tim Walz is going to kick off a man-focused media blitz. He's going on Good Morning America to interview Michael Strahan on a football field. So that should bring some back. And then he's going pheasant hunting with social media influencers. So that might just really
and Friday Night
push
Lights
men over.
West.
Yeah, push men over the edge. Really make it happen after they saw that ad, and that didn't work. But Tim Walz is going to really zero it in.
And he shakes his hands like this, It's like very masculine, very masculine.
Not what I would say is very masculine. But okay, so before we get in the Twilight Zone, I had something a little fun. I was going to do FAQ Friday, but we're a little bit low on time. Unfortunately, we'll save that for when Erica comes back. But MMO, I had a question for you. I saw this. Okay. I thought it was interesting. I'd just be curious your gut reactions of this poll here. We have how couples meet in the U.S. And we start in the 1950s. to 2020. Okay. And just for the audio listeners, I'm going to describe the through line here. The top one in 1950 was either through family or through friends. And in 1980, you get the dawn of online meeting your partner.
Still very low, right?
And then in 2020, online is now above 50%, looks almost at 60%, maybe even higher. We don't even see how high it goes. And every other method of meeting your partner is below 10%. So that's through family, through friends, work, bar, grade school, neighbors, and college. What do you think about this trend?
Well, it makes complete sense, and it's really sad, unfortunately, where, if we give modern youth, even adults, the opportunity to select their partner, I hate that word, but their future girlfriend, their future boyfriend, their future wife or husband, based on a bunch of pictures on an app where the stakes are really low and you can, message them and not get your feelings hurt or not even get your pride hurt that much. That's a lot safer and lower risk to most men and women nowadays, and that's what's happening. It's also really, I think, encouraged hookup culture. It's really encouraged low commitment from men. It's really incentivized men in general across the board, even I would say a lot of Catholic men, to be afraid of commitment because there's so many options out there. There's so many other people to swipe through. And I think social media has encouraged that as well. So it's a very depressing but accurate representation of the modern dating culture. And I think, most people who are dating currently, or even, both of you could say that meeting someone in person tells you a lot more about that person than scrolling through pictures of them on an app. And something that I think a lot of people don't realize is, especially if you've been married for a while and you haven't been in the dating scene, it's very sad to realize what most men are.
A direct shot at Josh. Okay, continue.
No, Josh, don't worry. It was not at you. I think what people don't realize is when men
I'm
are
married, okay? Back
away.
It's a joke.
All right, continue. Sorry, continue. I had to slide that in there.
When men are swiping through dating apps, they're swiping through a lot of pictures of women in bathing suits. So it's not even like, it's on a dating app and you're looking to maybe date this girl. It's like you're evaluating pretty much everything about her body right up front. And that's crazy. That's
it's not helpful
to me. No, it's not helpful. And it's also a very weird reversal of how things are supposed to go. When you're dating, you're supposed to evaluate the person's personality and how kind they are and how good they are and whether you get along and whether you like their confidence level and whether they treat the waiter right, not how good they look in a bikini before you've even learned their name. So it's a very twisted and inverted process nowadays, and it's sad. We need to get back to meeting people in person. I think people should be setting each other up. That's a great way to help people meet, and trying to meet people. Meet people at places that you would want to meet someone, not at a bar, not a great place to meet someone, not at the club. I don't even know.
To echo what you're saying, though, is because you can't necessarily trust your own opinion alone anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you can, and there's just an infinite supply. You can just keep scrolling till you find somebody else until you find the perfect person. That's one of the many reasons why pornography is so bad. Because it's like I get to custom create my fantasy and I want this person to look exactly like this. And you're feeding your ego. That's what's a problem with it. But 2004, okay, yeah. There still actually technically was some online dating. It was the beginning of that stuff. All right. But it's such a poor imitation of real life because, look, I'm a pretty, as Tom will attest, a pretty crazy, unique individual. And
yes.
I'm not everyone's
Retweet.
Obviously. And so when you actually meet somebody, face to face and in person, you get those immediate cues, whether or not this is someone that could gel with you. And it's like, oh, and it was, in fact, my now wife's, her cousin, who's like, hey, you two would be perfect. And they brought us together and my mom and my sister were driving through Michigan at the time. And I'm like, okay, what do you think? And like, yes. Are you crazy? Of course, this is the one, And so it's nice to have that kind of thing because people who know you and love you and only want what's best for you. But everything in our culture tells you it's the opposite. Oh, mom and dad don't want you to date that person. And they're wagging their finger. It's like, no. Actually, they have the ability to break through your self-deception and give you honest advice because they actually care about your well-being. And so everything Hollywood tells you about this is bunk. Don't believe it.
I'm going to make a quick defense of some online dating because I know many people who have met their current spouse.
Yeah, I'm not trying to knock all of it.
Catholic match. I know because it's easy to obviously take because there are a lot of negatives, no doubt. Everything you guys said is true in some regard. But I do know a lot of people have met their spouse through Catholic Match or Hinge or whatever. I do think there's inherent problems with some of these apps where their design is not to have you meet your soulmate, but someone else. But it could be a good, like, meet people where they're at. I just think the disparity is insane. I mean, 60% feels way too high to me. Some people can use it as a tool, great. And I know people who have, as we're saying here. But I do think it's hard. And I don't know. I was just talking to my our producer, Rosie, beforehand. And she just wanted a date, which sounded awesome. But was frustrated as a woman that men aren't taking initiative, say, in public to, say, ask a woman out on a date. They feel nervous to do so, or it's just not happening. And she wants that. She desires that. I think most women desire that, like, kind of men first move thing. And I think, unfortunately, I've kind of seen this trend go of, like, the Me Too movement, exposing people online, that kind of thing. Like, there's a lot of pressures that make it kind of men nervous to do that now. At the workplace, women in the workplace, that kind of thing. There's a lot of examples where men are in spaces with women now where they don't want to come across as, say, creepy or make someone uncomfortable because they hear all the horror stories of, like, women bashing on that, whatever. Yeah. And so online dating feels like kind of unfortunately, like a safer place where it's already kind of preset, like, hey, you come here, the expectation is, we're here to date.
I think that's right.
I think there's something to that. Yeah. So one thing I would say to the ladies, maybe, and MMO, I want to hear your thoughts, but the more you can kind of like make it easier on men in those situations of like suggest that that's like what you're hoping for, I guess, probably more success you'll get. I think men will really appreciate that because I can speak for myself. The last thing I'd want to be as a man is make someone feel uncomfortable or creepy. And I think a lot of men actually are that. There, of course, are the outliers that are, creepy, gross, whatever. And I'd say there's outliers on the women's side too. And we're kind of pitted against each other for no reason because, of course, they're complementary and we should be helping each other out. So I'd say that would just help.
Yeah, I would just say I'm gonna embarrass myself here. I think this is so funny. If anyone has seen the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice, there's a scene when all the soldiers come to town, and Lydia, the youngest sister, says the way you talk to a soldier is you drop your hanky and they pick it up and then you're introduced. And I actually think that is a great metaphor for dating in general. In our modern culture, a lot of guys are very afraid to make a first move, and all you gotta do is drop the hanky and they pick it up and then you're introduced. So I am a huge proponent of hanky dropping, but not making the first move. So
I am man enough to watch Pride and Prejudice and add that to the movie list of West Side Story, back to the ad. I actually haven't, and my wife loves it, so I probably need to get around to that. Okay, so we got a tight slap for the Twilight Zone here. Josh, if you want to rip up top, what do you have?
Well, actually, CNN did a story that said men, speaking of men and women, right? Men have a bigger carbon footprint than women, thanks to their appetite for cars and meat. And someone said, oh, wait a minute now, look who's admitting there's only two genders.
Gosh dang it.
That's pretty funny.
That is pretty funny. I'll give him that one.
But I'll add on another little quick thing. We talked about it with Bobby Kennedy Jr. before, but he talked about all the dyes that are in food. Yeah. And so Hollywood actress Eva Mendes actually announced publicly she was boycotting Fruit Loops because of the dyes in it. And she was joined by other celebrities, Khloe Kardashian and, Ellen DeGeneres. I would never think I'd be in company with these ladies, but I agree with them. Stop buying this Fruit Loop stuff. It's got bad red dye number 5 or whatever it is. Yeah. We don't need that. So they make the same Fruit Loops. I mean, they make Fruit Loops in Canada and other countries. They don't have these dangerous chemicals in it. So why can't we have it here in the United States?
Yeah, MMO, you missed the Make America Healthy Again episode. We talked about the Dr. Casey and Dr.
She listens to all our episodes.
Oh, that's true. You know.
Of course I do. No, we did a huge report at the Daily Wire on the Maha movement and how all these influencers that have never voted for Trump in their lives are moving over to vote for him now because he's talking about what they care about. So I'm very interested in that whole movement. I think it's fascinating.
Yep. I think it actually is kind of a cool opportunity to reach across the aisle. I think everyone acknowledges the problem. As we talked about, people in Big Pharma acknowledge there's an obesity problem. People outside acknowledge. Doctors acknowledge the problem. Everyone, every single person. So it could be a cool opportunity to come together. So Mary Margaret, what was your Twilight Zone?
My Twilight Zone, well, first of all, it was this crazy video that we broke yesterday at Daily Wire where you can see a convicted sex offender who was convicted of fondling the genitals of young boys. He had just presented an award to a candidate who's running for Attorney General of North Carolina. He's a Democrat, Jeff Jackson. And in the video, you can see this candidate hugging this convicted sex offender, which is particularly interesting because we know that this guy was aware of who he was. So crazy story.
Yikes.
Yes.
And I see some rainbow lights behind him too. I assume this was
Yes, this was an LGBTQ event, and he was getting an LGBTQ award there.
Yikes.
So crazy.
Yeah.
And then I had another one because, I never feel like I bring my best to the Twilight Zone. So
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I like that energy. I like that enthusiasm.
Brittany Mahomes is pregnant, which is very exciting. And she, of course, we know the drama here where Brittany Mahomes has been liking Trump posts, and then there was all this backlash, and everyone thought that Taylor Swift was going to abandon her. But Taylor didn't, to her credit. Even though Taylor Swift just endorsed Kamala Harris in a very pro-abortion post. And yet with her cat, and she kind of called out J.D. Vance for his childless cat lady's comments. But here Taylor is with her hand on Brittany's stomach while she's saying she wants everyone to vote for the most pro-abortion presidential candidate our country has ever seen.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, come on, Taylor. That's all I gotta say about that. Okay, thank you. I love the enthusiasm. So I have three.
Come on.
I got three.
Okay.
They'll be quick.
Way to one up me.
It'll be quick.
I
had to. I had to. Come on. It's our
Who's
program.
this guy?
Here. We can't let the guests outplay us here. So this one is Tim Waltz actually came pretty close to combat for the first time. He went live on a World of Warcraft Twitch stream. And so quickly I thought, wow, he's actually going to be in combat. The Twilight Zone about this is he didn't even do so. He wasn't even playing World of Warcraft. The guy just played his Arizona speech next to World of Warcraft.
What?
So ironically, the perfect encapsulation of dodging combat once again. Didn't even make it into digital combat.
Yeah.
So, par for the course there. So that's my first one.
The whole Twitch thing, I cannot get over this. This is where I show I'm an old fogey. You're watching people play video games. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
Yeah,
Sorry.
this is a monthly segment of Josh not understanding live streaming video games.
I don't get it either, Josh. I'm not a fan.
So my next one here is LinkedIn culture. LinkedIn culture is getting out of hand. We have Ryan Salami, I think is how you pronounce it. He just is going to jail. Salome, I don't know. He's going to jail. He was a part of the FTX scandal. He's going to serve 7.5 years in prison. He posted on LinkedIn, I'm happy to share that I'm starting a new position as inmate at FCI Cumberland. And you
That's
get the
a
little
LinkedIn
cupcake.
update. Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's people in the comments saying congratulations, exclamation.
I love those LinkedIn.
Like he's working security or doing social media for the prison? No, he's going to prison.
He's going to be an inmate, dude.
I think those are like those automated responses on LinkedIn where you can just automatically click congratulations. Yeah. Me up.
Getting out of hand. And then I'm going to round it out here. Okay. So Star Wars, we got some Star Wars heads in here. I'm no longer really one of them, but I used to as a kid. So we have our first transgender Star Wars Stormtrooper, which is kind of nice. Now I had to pause to think about the irony of this. Clones are created to be kind of nameless, faceless cannon fodder for the Empire. Yeah. I'm not sure. So we have a description. When one of our kind expressed her gender identity differently than her fellow troopers, she feared that she'd have to hide who she truly was inside. Fortunately, her brothers in the 7th Sky Corps gave her the same named sister as a constant reminder that she belonged. And then I love the critical drinker. He does critique on a lot of this stuff. Definitely the kind of kind, tolerant, compassionate, and inclusive attitude I'd expect from an army of mindlessly obedient killing machines who exist to fight and die.
Only to fight and die, right? Yeah, exactly.
That's it. But they're concerned about gender identity.
They did the meme though. That's so great. I mean, like,
what's the meme?
The rainbow Death Star. Like it's like the plane coming up, dropping all the bombs, but it's got Black Lives Matter and the rainbow stuff on it. But
The Nikki Haley approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Mary Margaret, thank you so much for taking the time today. Super fun to have you on. If people want to follow your work, throw some followers your way, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter or X at Mary Marg Olohan, or you can find me Instagram, Mary Margaret Olohan, and you can find my work at dailywire.com. So you should subscribe and support more great investigative journalism. Or my book, D-Trans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult.
This one's missing your signature, though. I'll have to get it autographed someday.
That's your fault. You should have gotten it to me.
You were busy working the March for Life. I wasn't going to bother you.
You've been on the show enough now to where I feel like a signature is required. Like,
I know. We're overdue.
Same with Peachy. Peachy needs to send us a book.
Yeah, for sure.
Her book is awesome. She's the best cover I've ever seen. But I love LOOPCast. Love being here. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Sweet. Well, hey, we end every show with a prayer. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us. Have a great weekend, guys. We'll be ready, locked, and loaded on Monday.